And you already talked about some of the stuff we've done. I want to tell you the why, right, and the how, which is what's really important to us. I'm really, really thrilled with like the pace that we've set and the momentum that we've gotten and some of the stuff that we've gotten done in just 2 years. I was speaking at Harvard this summer, and I say that mostly just to drop the name Harvard. Have you heard of it? Have you heard of it?
It's all right. There are sister schools.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Next time I go there, I'll be like, I was speaking at Hamline. But I was telling them all the list of stuff that we've gotten done in the last 2 years, and they were like, wait, how long have you been there? And I like that, so I do love that. But what's really important is the what, is the why and the how. The why is because I'm convinced, we talk a lot about equity in our community. And sometimes we get confused about what equity means. My first year in office, somebody asked me if I wanted fireworks on the 4th of July, and I said, absolutely, I love the fireworks. And they said, it's going to cost us $100,000. And I said, absolutely not, what's next? And in that same budget, coincidentally, we were able to find $100,000 to start a legal defense fund for immigrants and refugees in our state. And my point is, thank you. And my point is, we're always making value decisions, right? And some folks went, oh, it's just $100, it's $1. It's like, we can do the fireworks. And I, like, where I'm from, $100,000 is still a good amount of money. But here's the thing. A friend of mine who's progressive and does this work with me, who I've known for over a decade, kind of went, well, aren't fireworks, isn't it like an equity thing though, right? Because like rich kids and poor kids and black kids and white kids and kids in every neighborhood can see the fireworks like equally, right? And I went, oh, that's an important question, right? Like, this is not an equity table because we all know that it's red, right? Equity is what happens when we intentionally identify and dismantle the disparities that we see in our community, knowing that we still have a city, we still have a state, we still have a country where we can predict a child's life, like expected life outcomes more accurately based on her race and her zip code than we can based on her GPA, right? And so equity is when we, and I ended up telling them, like, if you can tell me how fireworks can help dismantle that, then fireworks will be an equity issue. So for me, I go back to business school, right? And in business school, there's no question about what we mean when we say the word equity, because it's a money term. Equity means ownership, it means decision-making power, and it means the ability to participate in an economy. When the economy does better, I do better, right? When there's financial rewards, I get a part of them. I keep hearing people talk about the great economy that we're in right now, but then I have neighbors who don't have an easier time paying the rent. So I wonder why we should celebrate this imaginary economy that someone else is participating in that most of my neighbors would tell you they don't experience. So our goal for St. Paul is to make sure that everybody knows, our students, our families, our low-income families, our communities of color, know that they are owners of this city. People ask me, can we come to city council meetings? And I tell them, you literally pay the rent on the building, right? Literally, that's not a joke. You literally pay the rent on the building. It is your space, right? That people are able to participate in the decision-making processes. So the how is by engaging people and putting people in the center of the conversation every chance we get. When we got elected, people ask me, who's your transition team going to be, right? And that's code language for who are the 12 to 15 most insiders that are going to be in this administration. Instead, we did a cattle call and invited over 100 St. Paul residents to come and source resumes and do interviews and things like that with us, right? When we do our budget process, we're about to launch our budget process for this year. The way we build the budget for the city, the biggest centerpiece of my job every year is building the city budget, which is about just over $500 million. It's a document this thick, and we do it by engaging people in community and experiences all over the city. We should do one at Hamline this year, by the way. Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm serious. I love that. I appreciate that. So whatever we do, this past year we had a series of we had a spike in gun violence, and we had to figure out how to address this crisis, and we brought people together. And so and 750 people came out to a series of 3 events to participate in this solution-making process with us that resulted in what I think is the most comprehensive, data-driven, evidence-based approach to violence reduction that we've ever undertaken in the city of St. Paul. So I'm excited about that, but again, it's not me, it's us, it's the fact that we're doing this. The reason that's important, is the last thing I'll say, because I know you have questions, is is, my family's one of those Rondo families. Are you familiar with the Rondo story? Rondo Avenue was the street that was torn up to build the freeway. It was the center of our African American community here. And what's important is this story is played out all over the country, right? From Oakland to Detroit, everywhere across the country. I read a study once that showed that estimated that Rondo, the decimation of Rondo, in today's dollars, stripped somewhere in the realm of $100 million from our African American community here in St. Paul. That's not nationally, right? That's St. Paul, that's Rondo, right? Now, my grandfather was one of those families. My dad grew up on Old Rondo. My grandfather had, I think, 7 or 8 commercial properties on Rondo, and that would have been my family inheritance that doesn't exist now because we all get a freeway. I'm convinced that didn't happen because somebody was in a smoke-filled room trying to figure out how to strip $100 million in 2020 dollars from the African American community. I think what more often happened is there was a big decision that was made without the African American community at the table. And so we have to ask ourselves why we have these disparities, and I'm convinced that the why is because decades and generations of exclusive decision making that has happened without all of the people who are impacted most directly at the table. And so in that sense, reversing that, charting a new course, even with the young first mayor of color in the city, if I just disappear in my office and try to make decisions by myself, no matter what great ideas I can come up with the door closed, that'll be more of the same and not a new direction for the city. And so our commitment is, and this goes right to, and I nerd out on the Declaration of Independence when I was in college. I know some of you guys are in this space. I would read Stalin and I'd be like, oh, he had great ideas, right? And then I'd read Lenin and be like, oh, but you know what, this is even better. And I'd be like Chairman Mao and be like, oh man, everybody else is missing it, right? And I'd read Che Guevara, all these folks, you know what I'm talking about, right? That's what you do in college, right? And I kid you not, I reread the Declaration of Independence and I was like, oh my God, we should use this. And I kid you not, if there's some real problematic wording in there, and there's some real problematic things in the lives of the people who wrote it. But the creed, the test that they laid out in that document, right? That governments are instituted among men. I'd have some things to add to that. But that governments are instituted deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Right? That's one of the most revolutionary statements that has ever been written, right? That the just power of government only comes from the consent of the governed. Now, slide that around the conversation we had about consent in the Me Too era, right? The consent doesn't mean nobody came out and voted against it. Consent doesn't mean nobody showed up at the public hearing and said they don't like it. Consent doesn't mean they decided to go along with it, right? Consent is this informed agency agreement, right? Proactive agreement. And so if the founders and framers of the Constitution, and I am not a strict constitutionalist, that may surprise you. I doubt it surprises you. But the whole underpinning of our government is this notion of consent of the governed. And that's what we're trying to exercise in St. Paul. I think that's why we're able to, make efforts that we haven't done in the past. That's why we're able to set the pace and hold the pace that we've done. It really is not because of me, it's because of the incredible staff that we have in our office, like Ikram Khaliso, who did all the muscle work on the college savings accounts, college bound that you were talking about. You can tell by her face, she loves it on college. It's because President Miller of partners like you, who did so much of the work, kind of participating in those tasks, in the work groups that we spent our time in for a year to help us even get to that point. And it's because we have people all over our community who just every time we say we want some help, just keep on stepping forward. So I'm excited about where we are.
So
I didn't say anything about our work in City Hall. I work in City Hall, I'm the mayor. Waxing philosophical.
we like you to wax philosophically because we also know behind all the philosophical waxing is action.
That's right.
And we like that even more.
There has to be.